In a move that has sent shockwaves through the Nigerian security landscape this January 2026, the Katsina State Government has stepped forward to vigorously defend its decision to facilitate the release of 70 suspected terrorists and bandits who were previously in custody and facing serious criminal trials. This development, which came to light following the leak of a classified document marked secret from the State Ministry of Justice, has ignited a fierce national debate about the price of peace and the integrity of the judicial system. The document, dated January 2, 2026, was addressed to the State Chief Judge, requesting the intervention of the Administration of Criminal Justice Monitoring Committee to expedite the release of these suspects. According to the government, this is not a sign of weakness, but a calculated strategic move to consolidate a community-driven peace accord that has been in the works across 15 frontline local government areas. The Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Nasir Muazu, has been at the forefront of this defense, explaining that the release of these 70 individuals was a core condition set by armed groups for the continuation of a peace pact that has already seen the successful return of over 1,000 abducted Nigerians to their families. The government's logic is rooted in a prisoner exchange philosophy, with officials drawing parallels to international conflict resolutions and even Nigeria's own history during the Civil War and the release of the Chibok girls. This situation has created a profound tension between the necessity of the law and the urgent, visceral need for human survival. Imagine being a resident in one of these frontline communities where the threat of a raid is a nightly reality. For these citizens, the theoretical application of justice in a distant courtroom often feels less relevant than the immediate return of a father, a daughter, or a neighbor. The Katsina State Government is essentially arguing that the judicial process, while vital, must sometimes yield to the practicalities of saving lives in a conflict that has become increasingly asymmetric. Commissioner Muazu has been adamant that these 70 individuals are being released as a gesture of good faith, a diplomatic currency intended to purchase a reprieve from the relentless cycle of violence that has characterized the Northwest for nearly a decade. They are looking at this through a lens of restorative justice rather than purely retributive justice, hoping that by reintegrating these suspects under the supervision of their respective community leaders, they can flip the script on the recruitment pipelines that keep these bandit groups operational. However, the timing and the nature of this decision have left many Nigerians deeply unsettled, especially as data reveals that over 1,500 civilians have been killed by bandits in Katsina State over the last 5 years, with the highest annual death toll of 533 lives lost just last year in 2025. Critics argue that while the government is releasing suspects to satisfy a peace deal, the violence on the ground has not necessarily halted, as evidenced by recent coordinated raids in areas like Dutsinma, where livestock was rustled and homes were looted just days ago. Prominent voices, including human rights lawyers and security analysts, have characterized this move as a dangerous precedent and an inversion of justice that could potentially embolden criminal networks by showing them that violence can be used as leverage to bypass the law. There are also grave concerns regarding the constitutional implications, as some suggest this state-level negotiation might contradict the federal government's broader no-negotiation policy with designated terrorist groups. Despite these heavy criticisms and calls for a state of emergency from figures like Barrister Ifeanyi Ejiofor, the Katsina State Government remains firm, insisting that the peace process, which involves 16 distinct steps of verification and community engagement, is the most viable path to stopping the bloodshed and allowing displaced farmers to return to their lands. If you are finding this deep dive into Nigeria's current security challenges insightful and you want to stay updated on how this situation in Katsina unfolds, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update on the stories that matter most to our nation. Your support helps us continue bringing you the facts as they happen in real time. The debate is now shifting toward the legalities of Section 371 Subclause 2 of the Katsina State Administration of Criminal Justice Law, which the government cited as its authority, while the public demands more transparency regarding the identities of those being released and what measures are in place to monitor them once they return to the forests or their communities. The controversy deepens when we look at the specific legal mechanism being used. By invoking the Administration of Criminal Justice Monitoring Committee, the executive branch is essentially asking the judiciary to perform a mercy drop on active cases. This has led to a standoff of sorts with the legal community. Many lawyers are asking, what happens to the evidence gathered? What happens to the witnesses who risked their lives to testify? If these 70 suspects are released and then returned to the trenches, who bears the responsibility for the next life lost? The Katsina government counters this by stating that the alternative is a perpetual state of war where the military is stretched thin and the economy of the state is completely hollowed out. They are betting everything on the hope that these released individuals will act as ambassadors for peace within their camps, convincing their peers that there is a way out of the bush that doesn't end in a shallow grave or a life behind bars. This strategy is not without its domestic detractors, who see it as a form of appeasement. Historically, the word appeasement carries a heavy burden, often associated with short-term fixes that lead to long-term catastrophes. The fear is that the bandits are not negotiating in good faith, but are simply using the peace deal as a tactical pause to rest, resupply, and wait for the rainy season when the terrain becomes even more difficult for the Nigerian Air Force to monitor. Furthermore, there is the issue of the victims' families. While the government celebrates the return of 1,000 captives, what about the families of the 1,500 who were murdered? For them, seeing suspected killers walk free without a full trial feels like a second betrayal by the state that failed to protect them in the first place. The government's communication team has been working overtime to frame this as a necessary evil, a bitter pill that must be swallowed to prevent the total collapse of the agricultural sector in the Northwest, which is the food basket of the nation. As we navigate through these complex layers, it is important to realize that Katsina is effectively a laboratory for a new kind of conflict resolution in Nigeria. If this works, it could become a blueprint for Zamfara, Kaduna, and Niger states. If it fails, it could lead to a total breakdown of the social contract where citizens no longer see any point in cooperating with the police or the courts. The government insists that they have a robust vetting process where traditional rulers and local elders stand as guarantors for the released suspects. But in an era where bandits have previously attacked the convoys of traditional rulers, the question of how much influence these elders truly have remains up for debate. We are seeing a shift where the state is essentially outsourcing its security guarantees to the very communities that are being victimized. We want to hear your thoughts on this very sensitive issue. Do you believe the Katsina State Government is doing the right thing by trading the freedom of suspects for the lives of kidnapped victims? Or do you think this deal undermines the rule of law in Nigeria? Does the release of 70 suspects justify the freedom of 1,000 innocent souls? It's a moral dilemma that has no easy answer. Let's get a conversation going in the comment section below. Tell us what you think about the prisoner exchange comparison and if you feel this model should be adopted in other states or if it should be stopped immediately. Your engagement is what makes this community thrive, so don't forget to share your perspective and of course hit that subscribe button to join our growing community of informed citizens. Beyond the immediate headlines, we must also look at the economic ripple effects. When bandits control the roads, the cost of food in Lagos and Abuja skyrockets. When farmers are too afraid to plant, the entire nation feels the hunger. The Katsina government is arguing that by clearing the path through these releases, they are effectively lowering the cost of living for every Nigerian by restoring security to the farms. It is a macroeconomic argument for a micro-security decision. However, the international community is also watching. Foreign investors and human rights organizations often look at the consistency of the legal system when deciding where to put their resources. A system where criminal suspects can be released via an administrative memo might appear unstable to outsiders. This is the tightrope the governor and his cabinet are walking, trying to satisfy the immediate, desperate needs of their local constituents while maintaining the appearance of a stable, law-abiding state on the national and international stage. The narrative from the streets of Katsina is a mix of relief and terror. There are those who have seen their children return from the forest, and for them, the governor is a hero who did what was necessary. Then there are those who live in the shadows of the Rugu forest, who fear that the men being released today will be the ones knocking on their doors. The government's defense rests on the idea that they are not just releasing people, but exchanging them for a future. They claim that the 70 suspects were not the high command leaders, but foot soldiers whose release was symbolic enough to satisfy the bandit leaders. But in the world of insurgency, a foot soldier with a grudge and local knowledge can be as dangerous as a commander. As we move further into 2026, the success or failure of this Katsina model will likely define the security legacy of the current administration. We will continue to monitor the court filings, the community reports, and the official statements to see if this gamble pays off or if the secret document leaked this month was the beginning of a much larger crisis. Stay tuned to this channel as we bring you more updates on this and other breaking news across the Federation.